David, welcome and thank you for being here.
Pleasure.
David, you seem to be one of the formidable experts at handling conflicts of interest. You managed to have relationships between Gillard and Rudd, Turnbull, Howard, the Packers and the Murdochs, and in fact you've in some cases negotiated deals or managed arrangements for all parties at once. Clearly you're very tactful, but what are the characteristics that have you be successful in that, and what is your advice to the audience around managing conflicts of interest?
Well, I think there are a lot who do that, by the way. I really do. And there are many probably who in many respects do it better than I do. What I have is I was trained, as I said earlier, as a lawyer. I respect people. I respect their secrets and I respect their strengths, and I have to understand their weaknesses. I think, like everybody, and I'm sure most of the audience watching this today, we all know how to work through with people. Sometimes our egos get the better of us and we do things that often I think people regret, and if they've got an enormous ego they probably don't realise they should regret it. What I think I've been able to do, mainly because of the training of realising that I'm just a cog in a very big wheel, is to keep my ego at bay and to realise that I'm just a player within a bigger group, wherever I am, whether I'm the chair, whether I'm the advisor, whether I'm just a stakeholder. And the joy one can have of that organisation blossoming is the most important thing. And by the way, the organisation could be Australia as a whole. And if you take it that way, then really it doesn't matter whether you're the one who gets the kudos, doesn't matter whether in fact it's your ideas that are seen to work. The most important thing is that you relish and make sure of the team situation, and I think also that you're discreet and trustworthy.
David, the chairs in this room are responsible for dozens of funds which represent 11 million working Australians, some $1.2 trillion in capital, in fact workers' capital and retirees' capital. There is certainly no shortage of room for conflicts of interest. What's your policy way about handling conflicts of interest in the boards in which you operate?
Yeah, I think that I have had to, as you said earlier, live with conflicts of interest. I think that it's very hard, and I'm sure, knowing who's in the room today, all of us have done lots of things in different situations, otherwise we didn't get to where we've got. And Australia is not a very big place, and indeed those who are called to service in these areas are in a restricted number. So how do you deal with conflicts, in my opinion? I think there are just two tenets of that. One is transparently, and second is a procedure. It has to be. And can I say, there's a lot of talk about how terrible conflicts of interest are. Often, in my experience, if you're transparent about your conflict, and if there's a procedure for doing it, it actually ends up better for both the organisation and for the individuals. Everybody knows where you're coming from. Indeed, it may be that you've got somebody to contribute. I might like the fact that I know that you do have a conflict because you can tell me exactly what that conflict is, and you can probably explain to me who the people are we're dealing with. And then, of course, I must make the decision. If I don't have the conflict, it must be transparent, etc. I think that it's terribly important that people who particularly are involved in making decisions are very sensitive to the fact that somebody might suggest it, even if that's an academic suggestion. And by being totally transparent, you diffuse it, and indeed, I think, as I say, can actually turn it to advantage for the organisation.
Now, David, you've stood down from many boards because you felt like you're taking on a new directorship that may have a very slight conflict with the organisation that you're joining. In our sector, there are still some directors that are on multiple superannuation boards. So I'm interested to hear whether you think that may be in fact a conflict or not, and how you manage conflicts between organisations when you hold multiple directorships.
Yeah, and I would not know the exact answer whether it is a conflict, although I have some doubt, I must tell you, whether it is a conflict. But what I would say is this, that there are some conflicts that are so big, that they're so obvious, that you can't have people on the same board. For example, we have 4 major trading banks in Australia. You couldn't be a director of 2 of them. It just couldn't work. I could say also, because I adore obviously Coca-Cola and what they do, a Pepsi director is unlikely to make its way onto the board of Coca-Cola, and vice versa. So these are some of the easy ones. It's much more difficult, for example, if you're on the board of an insurance company and somebody wants you to go on the board of a major trading bank. There is crossover. Some of the trading banks own insurance companies. Is there a conflict? Isn't there? And I think the first thing to do is to, as I said earlier, be totally open about it. The biggest problem people do, in my opinion, is hide it. One should actually trumpet, this is what I am, and then it's up to the chair and others to work out whether they're prepared to live with it. And then correspondingly down the road at the insurance company, if you're talking about the bank board, they also have to know about it and talk about it. And one can work it out.
David, let's talk about now recruitment for boards, and in fact the mix, the diversity, and what's the appropriate mix of women for boards?
Now enter the concept of diversity. And by the way, diversity is broader than just gender. Gender's very important. I mean, for us to select from just 48 or whatever it is % of the population, which the male population is ridiculous. We've got a small enough population as it is, we should select from 100%. Gender is only one item. I think we need in Australia to also look at age, and that's not just because I'm advancing in my age, but I do think we get rid of people too young. The third thing I'd say is I think we need geographic diversity. I don't agree with the concept that's just been floated, although I think the idea is a good one, of quotas of people who have Asian experience or experience in Asia, because I don't believe in quotas, but I do believe that it is wonderful to have on our boards, be they trustee boards or be they big company boards, people who are from different walks of life, be they Asian, be they people from Europe or whatever, with relevant experience that we need. They give a different vantage point, and coming back to what I said earlier, they allow for a different eagerness to argue, which makes a tightness and a better decision. Because I think discussing things with oneself is a nice thing to do, but doesn't necessarily give you that extra that you require from a team, which is obviously what a board is. When I started in company work, I was chosen because I was a lawyer. And when I looked around, most people were lawyers. Then we had that spate where we decided we need a lot of accountants, and so on. I actually think we need from all walks of life.
David Gonski, thank you very much for the generosity of your time and information.
Thanks, Colin.